One of the big news stories of this week would be Israeli troops crossing the border into southern Lebanon, of course, and then Iranian missile strikes into Israel. Things certainly heating up in the Middle East, and that's not just affecting the Middle East, it's affecting many different parts of the world, including Australia. Craig Heilmann joining me on the show. Craig, kia ora, good morning.
Kia ora, Andrew. Great to speak to you, mate.
The stories we're looking at today, all of them got a bit of a Middle Eastern connection, but let's start with the story of a pro-Palestinian rally. Somebody got themselves in a bit of difficulty over this one.
Well, a lot of people actually, but one young lady in particular, 19-year-old girl, we don't know her name yet, but she's had to turn herself into the police station. She was waving a Hezbollah flag at a rally. There were rallies in Sydney and Melbourne, and various people are being investigated. There'll be more charged, I would guess. Now, it's not a given that you'll be charged because the Australian law says, well, look, Hezbollah is a prescribed organisation, terrorist organisation. So you can't run around the streets waving their flags. Having said that, unless you're inciting hate or sort of threats of violence or whatever, there are not necessarily going to be consequences. But you could go to jail for up to a year for waving a Hezbollah flag in the wrong way. So it just depends. Now, I think the authorities are taking it reasonably seriously because I noticed the New South Wales Police, there's threats of 2 more marches in Sydney for October 7th, obviously to celebrate, and I hate to use that word, but that's what we're talking about, celebrating the attack in Israel on October 7th, and the police are opposing those marches, saying, we prefer that they didn't get a little tag that says, yes, they can go and do the march.
Yeah.
The organisers have said, don't put your flags up, don't bring flags, but the chances of that being under control, so the police are challenging that. But what it does tell us, Andrew, is Australia's spiralling under the mass immigration that we've had. Australia's spiralling into some problems that we probably should have foreseen because it's happened elsewhere around the world, but we apparently hadn't foreseen it.
With this particular situation, because some people might think, well, what's the difference between a Hezbollah flag and a Palestinian flag, particularly given that Hamas is the political authority in Gaza? I mean, both terrorist organizations.
That's right. Palestinian flag is fine because it's considered to be a people group, I guess, not quite a nation state yet,
Okay.
but on its way perhaps. But Hezbollah is a prescribed terrorist organisation, and their flag is distinctive. It's just, it's a terrorist flag.
Yeah.
So that's the distinction in Australian law. There are groups that have been designated as terrorist organisations. Hezbollah, rightly, is one of those. But what does it tell us? Look, I think there's been a challenge since World War II to the concept of the nation state, the concept of a people group. I think that the sort of liberal elites that have been, bulldozing the world into its way of thinking since 1945 have argued that it was a dangerous idea for peoples to identify with images of peoples larger than themselves. So we prefer to think of a person denuded of all qualities, who's just a human being with rights. And we think, we can blend those people, put them all together, and somehow everything's going to be okay. And what we're learning is people are hanging on to their national and ethnic identities and their religious identities and their troubles with other peoples, and they're bringing them on the plane or on the boat with them to Australia. They're not going to get off the airplane in Sydney and go, well, I once was committed to Hezbollah, but I'm no longer so. That's just not happening. And so some of the mythology around what we've told ourselves, I think, since 1945 is starting to be stripped away. And we're realising that people's identities are very particular and very specific to them, and they don't give them up easily.
And in a related story, an individual wanting to start a political party with a focus on, wanting to target or represent the Muslim community in Australia. What's the situation there, Craig?
Yeah, so connected problem to what we've just been talking about with Hezbollah. We've got the Labor Party tended in Australia to have scooped up all the Muslim vote. So the Muslim voter tended to associate with Labor, big government, that sort of thing. And what's happened, of course, is that the Labor Party has a rule that you can't vote against something the Labor Party is for.
Yeah.
You can if you're on the other side of politics. Everybody's got a free vote unless they're in cabinet. But outside of that, they can vote however they like. With the Labor Party, not so. There was a vote in regards to Palestine, the Palestinian situation with Gaza, and she disagreed. She wanted to go the other way, perhaps with where the Green vote was going. So she broke ranks with the Labor Party. So they booted her out. She's a Muslim MP. She's actually a Muslim senator from Western Australia. Well, she's now starting her own political party. They anticipate it's in every Australian state. Then they anticipate running.
And from what you were saying before,
some candidates in inner city areas in Sydney and Melbourne.
And from what you were saying beforehand, they've got the numbers. This political party may get some traction, and well, perhaps ironically, do better in the polls than some of the Christian parties have previously.
Probably that's correct. And now they're saying they're not going to have a religious face to themselves, but the reality is they're going to take all the religious support the Muslim community can offer. Very likely they will get some seats or some Senate seats, and they'll certainly do some preference deals with other political parties, probably with Labor, funny enough, but they're all in the same sort of politics. But what it does show you is the left in Australia is under some threat as well from the Green Party and from now what's becoming splintered sort of religious vote, particularly around Islamic issues.
Just finally on this one, and there's a tenuous connection with the Middle East on this one, but it's more about Australian airline monopolies. Qantas trying to play hardball with Qatar Airways. That's backfired on them.
Yeah, in a big way, actually. They've done a great job of whining and dining politicians and giving themselves the sweetest seat at the table. And so they've been able to fend off. It's been very hard for another airline to really survive in Australia, and Virgin's been bounced around in terms of ownership. But what's happened with Qatar were blocked from doing air travel into Australia in significant ways. They're allowed to go to crazy airports where nobody would want to go, but none of the big boys stuff. Yeah. No, so what they're doing is talking about buying a 25% stake in Virgin Airlines and then opening up all of the routes through Virgin in Australia and then, of course, around the world as well with Virgin. So it would provide much more competition, which Qantas actually needs because they've got a very aging fleet. The last CEO spent no money on new planes, so they've got a very aging fleet and very poor service and protected by the government. So I hope it goes through.
Well, interesting to see how that is backfiring. And the thing is, with Qatar Airways, they've got some pretty deep pockets on that one. So
definitely,
yeah, being able to buy into the competitive airline, which may be good news for Virgin Airlines and maybe good news for competition within the airline sector in Australia, as it turns out.
Well, let's hope it's good news for the Australian traveller, the much beaten up Australian traveller whose planes and flights keep getting cancelled and nothing's done about it. So let's pray, let's hope.
Yeah, certainly. Hey, Craig, appreciate what you bring to the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
God bless, mate. Take care.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.